I practice a traditional martial art. I practice Matsumura Seito Shorinru, which is one of the more traditional styles of karate, insofar as if it were a church, it would be Roman Catholicism or Eastern Orthodoxy, in the sense that one of our claims to fame is that we go all the way back to the birth of karate. And that sort of pedigree comes with a certain legacy. And we've already discussed the old masters teaching through the kata today, but it's not just the legacy of the masters. It's the entire tradition. What those large monolithic churches that Protestants like me are not a part of would call apostolic succession. The succession here is from sensei to kohai, from teacher to student. And that relationship, that passing of the baton down from Soken Matsumura, bodyguard to the king of Okinawa, to his mysterious nephew Nabe, to Hohan Soken, to Seizen Kinjo, Yuichi Kuda, and Fusei Kisei, down to the recently deceased Master Ronald Lindsay, to my instructors Marlon Laws and Mike Suber, to me, to my students. That legacy is something to protect, something to be proud of. It's not a pride that's centered in oneself. It's not I've done so much. It's that I have this grand tradition to uphold. So how am I upholding it? And so the kata are a part of that legacy. See, katas in different styles of karate and similar martial arts, they change subtly over the years. I did a style of kung fu for a short time that had changed dramatically from its origin. And part of that was because of this instructor who was the first American practitioner of the style. And he had changed things to fit in line with some of his other training. And whether it was for the better or worse, who's to say? But that was part of their legacy. It was part of the stories they told as they trained. And we step into that legacy. In our style, we always try and remember, or at least in our organization, we always try and remember how one teacher would step versus another teacher, how one teacher would do this technique versus another teacher, because that's part of the legacy. And everyone had a reason for doing it, right? Like maybe you turn your foot inwards before you step to have better balance, or perhaps you turn your foot after you step so that you move quicker, but maybe there's a moment of lack of balance in the middle of the step. And you know how to do both of them. And maybe one was the way that you practice and teach, but you practice the other one too sometimes just to stay sharp on it. And so the legacy keeps burning, stays alive. And we'll remember that one instructor might attack with this technique here versus another one. I know in two different styles of karate, Pinan Shodan, someone might do an up block and a middle block, and someone else might do an up block and a punch. And it changes the implication of the movements, but both are related in their origin. It's somewhere along the way they changed. And that change isn't a bad thing. It's part of the tradition. It's part of the continuation of the martial art, the transmission of it, and how we add to the martial art as we pass it on, or take from it if we leave those things behind. It's kind of like how in the King James Version of the Bible, there are certain passages that weren't in the original autographs. Well, what happened? Well, scribes throughout the ages wrote a note in the margin, or something along those lines. And the next scribe wrote those notes in the margin, the next scribe, and at some point that note in the margin got blended with the text. And thankfully we have both the King James Version with all of the additions added in. And we also have the Dead Sea Scrolls with something much closer to the originals. We can hold them together and find which one is which. But it's good to have both. One, because it's the original, the core truth that we hold to. And the other, because it's part of the legacy. Well, kata are a little bit different because they're not perfect, infallible, inspired, and sacred. So the changes may be just as good as the originals. Maybe better. Either way, they're part of the legacy. Let's keep it alive.